Hello, thank you for watching the Macon Atlanta podcast. My name is Brent Macon. We're talking big questions, bold ideas, and better living with inspiring Atlantans. My guest today is Steve Carse, the founder and CEO of King of Pops. We're going to talk about his 15-year journey running the Pops empire that I'm pretty sure every single person listening to this podcast is familiar with. And so that in and of itself just speaks to what they've been able to accomplish, and they're just getting started. So without further ado, enjoy the episode today. Steve,
hey,
thank you for being here.
Excited.
Appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, yeah.
So to start, would love to understand the flavor distribution for King of Pops. What's the top seller? Any that might surprise us?
Yeah, so we have a core 4, which is probably accounts for 80% of our sales, which is cookies and cream, chocolate sea salt, strawberry lemonade, and a new addition of mango tangerine. It used to be raspberry lime. So those are probably at 80%. And then among those, chocolate sea salt's the one we got to have on every single cart. People will walk away if it's not there.
How outside is chocolate sea salt compared to the others?
It's flattening a little bit. Cookies and cream's been making a run. So I think they're basically neck and neck, and our actual, because of that, as a percentage, strawberry lemonade is now the top seller.
Strawberry lemonade, top seller.
Yeah.
Is that surprising?
I think it's surprising because I don't think it's our best pop, but it's a good pop. And I think it's, an approachable flavor that people can just understand what it's going to be like. They're into it.
What's your favorite?
My favorite is banana pudding that we have all the time. I get blackberry ginger lemonade if it's a summer day and it's available, but I'm like for restaurants, for anything, I'm like a new person. So I think part of why we always have new flavors is oftentimes my favorite is whatever's new. So the new fall flavors that are coming out, or spring or summer, whatever's new, I'm kind of excited about that.
I would have bet every dollar I had that it would have been chocolate or cookies and cream that was number one. I'm still shook that it's strawberry lemonade.
Yeah. So I think they kind of cannibalized each other, because if it's super hot out, the strawberry is the fruity ones are going to move more. If it's like a overcast day, or if it's the evening, or if it's any of the non-middle of summer months, the dairy ones do sell way better then. So, very interesting.
Did you ever have any flavors that you thought were going to crush it and didn't, or vice versa? Like surprise darlings of the King of Pops empire?
I think the mango tangerine is the closest to that. I mean, we have a pretty small catalog of flavors that can be out on a cart. It's usually 7 flavors at a time. So just by that fact alone, there's not any like dark horse that's getting a lot of minutes, if you will. Like it might get to go out once or twice, but it's not there every single time. So you kind of have to prove yourself to get more availability in the cart. So by the time you're
meritocracy,
there,
in the
by
pop
the time
cart.
you're there, it's not really a shock, but you will see. Yeah, mango tangerine definitely started to outsell raspberry lime pretty significantly whenever we looked at them like head to head. Raspberry lime is one of the flavors we've had since day one, and mango tangerine is probably a year and a half old. So it's making a good run.
At risk of a dumb question, how do you decide which 7 make it in the cart on a given day?
So like we said, the core 4 pretty much you'll see on most carts. Internally, we say that. And then, we have a supply issue or something sells out. It's okay if you don't have all 4 of them. Chocolate pretty much has to be, like I was saying. And then the other 3 are kind of like play spaces where if you're going to a kid heavy event, you might bring something different. If you're going to like an indie food fair where you'd bring like your most adventurous stuff. Just kind of depends on the audience, which, that leaves a lot up to the packer of the cart. They have a lot of power in that way.
All right. And when we talked before, you said that you don't get to work as much as you wanted to, or you want to work more than you're able to structurally, life-wise, and otherwise. What is it about working on King of Pops that is so enlivening to you and makes that true?
I hope it's not just that it's King of Pops. I think it's just that when you inject your energy into something, you want to see it succeed. And if you find like a way for it to be meaningful to you, like I don't think growing up, I thought popsicles were meaningful or interesting, but certainly after you spend a lot of your life in it and you figure out like how are the different ways that it can be impactful, it becomes meaningful for you. So I'd like to think that it's not King of Pops related, but ultimately it's just, I want to see it successful both for myself, but also the other people here. Yeah, I don't know more clear, inspiring way to say that, but I just want to see it do well. Like we've got a core value that is wear the shirt, and I wear a King of Pops shirt every day. And part of my little litmus test is like, if it feels icky or like, I'm kind of like, do I really want to put this on? And people are probably going to ask about it. I'm just want to have an off day or whatever. That probably says something about where the brand's at. And I try to use that as like a way to check myself a little bit.
Yeah. What all does wear the shirt mean?
It means a lot of things. We got it from, I should know the Portuguese translation if I'm to bring this story up, but we had a employee named Manu who was our marketing director at the time. It's, I don't want to say it because it's going to be on the internet forever. But she basically talked about how in Brazil, like your soccer team, you love it so much beyond just like winning and losing. Like you're connected to it. I think in the South, the equivalent is definitely like college football. Like you feel maybe more connected than you logically should to that thing. So we want our employees, myself, my brother, who's my business partner, we want to all feel that way. So like we have ridiculously wrapped King of Pops cars, and we drive those around, and it's kind of extra, and people probably look at us a little bit strange, like, because we don't need to be doing it. But yeah, I think it's just embodying it all the time, feeling proud of it for reasons that you can't necessarily explain or put into words.
What are some of those other core values, and which ones kind of most impact how you approach work in the day-to-day?
Yeah. So I think that one I think about a lot because I'm getting dressed every day. Get sweaty is one. And that's just really our nature is out on a cart slinging pops. So we really try to get everyone to be bought into that idea of like the actual hard labor does feel good. And if you haven't done it often enough, like figure out a way to try to inject that. And, it's hard if you're in accounting maybe to feel that way, but you can get out on the cart every once in a while. Be thoughtful is a big one that I hear just in meetings being said a lot. There's a lot of ways you can approach a problem, and there's typically a way to be more thoughtful. Others are get it done, pretty self-explanatory, stay hungry, and good vibes only. So that's the 6. I think I said them all.
Got it.
Yep.
I can appreciate what you said about just the amount of energy you put into something, getting sweaty, wearing the shirt, everything else, tying into your affinity for it, your feeling of investment, the energy you get out of it and draw from it too.
Yeah.
And also I know you're 15.
Yeah.
How constant has that been for you? How big of ebbs and flows? Like how has that
I think one thing that's really changed that I think what we were talking about having kids, and there was a time in my life where I was definitely working as much as I wanted. And I don't think I had that same zeal to start the next day because, I'd work until 1 a.m. or whatever until the job got done the night before. I've got a pretty like firm schedule. I'm rarely feel like I'm done with everything at 5 or 5:30 when I leave. So it's kind of like in the back of my mind, like I'm anxious about getting started back on the thing that I couldn't finish. So I think that makes it fun. Like having that start stop makes the whole block of time more enjoyable than if that block of time is just indefinite, as big as you need it to be.
How often were you pulling 1 a.m.s for King Pops? And what are
when you're making pops, it takes always just like making anything probably like my only current version is like if I'm fiddling with the website, like I can be like trying to get the spacing to be this instead of this. And I can like look up and I've spent an hour on that. So like sometimes when you're making things, it just takes longer than you would like. And certainly making pops is like, once you start, you basically can't leave until it's done. Yeah. You can't leave the machines on for a day. I mean, you probably could, but we don't do that. So like, a couple things go wrong or like you have to run out and do something and come back and finish up. Mainly making pops would go really late into the night.
And of your 15-year journey, how long were you a crucial cog in the pop making machine?
Probably the first 6 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And when did that stop happening? What was the point in the business where you're like, all right, I can hand off?
I probably could have handed it all off. I mean, I have never been probably up since year 1. Nick is better at flavors than me. So like a lot of the first ones I was heavily involved in. And then I'm always influencing and saying what I like and don't like. But I think I'm more just like I don't know. I was never like the kitchen lead, but when you're a company of like, 3 to 10 people and you need 5 people to run a shift in the kitchen, you're typically going to be in there. The packaging is like the thing that is that's the biggest beast, because it's like the chopping of the fruit you can kind of imagine, but the packaging, there's so many things that can go wrong and right, and well, not really right. In manufacturing, right is like just the expectation.
The status quo.
So it's like you never get a pat on the back for packaging one right. But yeah, I think that it just took a long time. I don't even remember what the question was, but
I think we originally started at high points and low points,
Yeah.
and then that got to 1 a.m.
yeah, I'd say it was kind of like I'd say it's kind of like been 3 5-year periods. First 5 years was like, is the business going to continue to exist? Like every winter we would be terrified of like, are people going to remember us next spring? Because this is fun and we want to keep doing it. After 5 years, we felt like, okay, we've got something, like it's not going to go to 0 next year. So we can like feel good about that. And then we started to think about like a bit more strategically on how to scale the business. That's like we started P10, we bought a farm. We started doing like things that were probably kind of 2 ways you can look at it. One is like kind of hedging in case the popsicle thing didn't work out. And then also it's a circle. So like farm grows the ingredients, popsicle company makes the ingredients, distribution company distributes it. There's a circle that was there that felt kind of like unique and cool, and still kind of feel that way. But so that was kind of like, I'd call it the second 5-year phase. And then the third phase has been, 2020 was the start of the third phase. So it was kind of like, what the heck phase, like COVID, crazy survival, and then like some good things coming out of it, feeling like we're back kind of at least with a vision and a path of something that could be really neat. So that's kind of how I've got it broken up in my mind.
How much of the ingredients that you use in King of Pops come from your farm?
Very few. Our goal is to get to 10%. We're probably less than 1%. It's just a tricky proposition.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think the part of the reason why we got a farm was to better understand like, and put like a line in the stand of like, we think sustainability is important, and to better understand like what farmers are going through. So I think we definitely understand like how hard it is, like just the harvesting of ingredients, which, before you can harvest it, you have to have a successful crop. You have to own the land. You have to have done all these things just to get to that point. But just like the cost of harvesting for us is typically more expensive than like what we would pay to get an equal quality product from like somebody that knows what they're doing on the farming world.
Would you do it again on the farm side?
Good question. I think I wouldn't. We have a 70-acre farm. I think I would maybe do like a 4-acre farm or something. I think we thought, so we have like, we've gotten a little bit more strategic about it, but we started out like, all right, we got a 70-acre farm. Let's develop a 70-acre farm. So we've gotten all of that like 15% developed instead of getting 1 acre 100% developed, which like that's the angle to go, because you've got something to show for it instead of like, here's some like kind of half finished stuff. So I think that's been a good lesson. I don't know. If I'm being completely honest, I don't know that I would do it again, because I think it's distracted sometimes from like things that we probably needed to put money in.
Yeah, farm was not on our interview guide today, and here we are talking farm, which is probably
so,
good.
I think the reason why it is good and what's powerful about it is like, that we're not organic. Like we don't use organic only ingredients. We use a lot of organic, maybe even mostly organic ingredients, but our like hierarchy is taste really good, local, then organic. So a lot of stuff we're using is not, but if people know you have a farm, it's almost like it's doing some of the same work for you. Like a lot of people assume that we are organic, even though we are not. And I think that like some of those things are super valuable.
Yeah, it's got a brand halo effect.
So I think that's been powerful. I mean, we've gotten good marketing from it. And a lot of it is marketing and just like personal. I envision a day where I would like to just idly stroll out to the farm and look at something beautiful and have it be running smoothly and not have to worry about all of the other stuff. Maybe that'll happen, maybe it won't, but it's nice to have that kind of goal in the back of your mind somewhere.
Yeah. And then one other kind of King of Pops logistics question. Yeah. How seasonal is the business?
It's quite seasonal. People say, like, we just got back from Alaska. People always say all these stats about how much ice cream people eat in the winter. And Alaska like prides itself in like the most ice cream per capita or something. But popsicles, I think, are different than ice cream. First, a lot of them are fruity and kind of less indulgent and more just like refreshing. And those definitely are sold a lot more in the hot months. And I think just in general, the fact that it's on a stick, people align it with like portability and being out and about, which isn't like as necessary if you're just like binge watching Netflix, which I think is when a lot of ice cream is consumed. So we're probably 75-80% during like the 8 months. We align really well with like the baseball season. So that's why we love being at like the Brave Stadium is April through October. Hopefully they make it deep into October. Can be pretty good. March is important to be ready because in Atlanta, March can be like perfect spring weather, middle of winter.
People are going to think we recorded this in September and that the Braves were still alive. It's October and the Braves did not make it deep into October, but next year's coming.
Next year, yeah. Always next year.
Okay. And then how big are the shifts that you have to make operationally to survive that? Is it like not hoard, that's not the right word, but hibernate with everything that we have because we've made it? Or is it like seasonal folks come and go? Is it some of both?
It's a little bit of both. Yeah. We've got quite a few seasonal folks some that have been here for multiple seasons, some that come for one season and doesn't work out. Or they just get another job over the winter that is full time. So a lot of students and like even like teachers, a lot of teachers that kind of works well with their schedule. And then the production, we've done it a couple ways. We've tried to like have a more steady production and then ramp up. We always kind of come back to ramping up more as they're needed just because frozen storage is kind of expensive. So you don't want to be sitting on a bunch of stuff that you're not going to sell for a couple months. But yeah, it's definitely a very seasonal business, which I think everyone kind of is to an extent, so everyone can relate to it, but it feels seasonal for sure.
And we, 15 years in, we were talking before this around how there's a low barrier to entry to start a popsicle company.
Yeah.
But that also, it's quite hard to really make it over a certain inflection point of success. Like if you had to boil it down and give yourself some credit, like what has it been that has allowed you all to endure and be successful and be in this position where you're surviving those 3-5 year periods and looking to grow?
Yeah, I think we, we're realistic with expectations and didn't need to make like millions for always, including today, for ourselves. So I think like that's important. We weren't trying to start the next like Chobani or, brand that's going to go to several billion. Like we're just like a local focused company and we don't intend for it to be an international company. Like that's just not a goal. Probably not even a national company, maybe one day, but we're kind of in no rush. So I think like properly aligned expectations worked out well for us. And then we just didn't ever take any really big swings. It's always was like, what can we do with the money we made this year to do it a little bit better next year, rather than like, let's go get a VC partner or a bank loan or something to buy bigger equipment than we need and then figure out a way to fill that. It's always just been like 20%, 20%, 20%. And it definitely adds up. And now 20%, if we can keep that rolling, I mean, that gets to be pretty exciting. Every year more exciting, obviously. But I think that is a big part of it, is just it doesn't keep people's attention that long. If you start at like 60 grand and then you grow 20%, those first couple years, it's hard to get that excited about what you're doing if you could go take 10 other jobs that are hiring on LinkedIn or whatever and make just as much, if not more, for all the heartache that you're going through.
Yeah. Has there been a season where you felt like the business was really had its back against the wall? And like, how did you navigate that?
Well, definitely COVID. And I think, everyone can relate to that. But for us, we built the business around going to large events. So, you can't sell 1,000 popsicles to one person typically that's hanging out by themselves. But if it's a 10,000 person, 20,000 person event, you're going to sell a lot of pops. So we already mentioned the Braves, all the graduations for like Emory, Georgia Tech, Kennesaw State. We do a lot of that stuff. We do a lot of large events with Delta, a lot of weddings, a lot of birthday parties, all of the gatherings that you can imagine. That's where we make our money. So those just stopped pretty quickly. And, we didn't really have a plan for that. We have a business that's on the shelf, and that luckily did pretty well still. But two things happened. One, our distribution company, which was definitely like in the back seat to King of Pops, took the front seat because getting food on shelves was a priority. So a bunch of, buyers that we couldn't get in front of suddenly were answering their phones just because they had a duty to fill up their shelves, probably more important than ever for those kind of couple of months that were the most intense. And that really sent P10, our distribution company, on a different trajectory, because once you have those relationships, it's just about keeping them.
Yeah. What percent of revenue is P10 roughly?
It's very intermingled because we're like selling stuff to ourselves, but probably 70% at this point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And then the other thing that happened that was pretty cool, and we needed to have this distribution company in place for it to work, is our we call it a neighborhood partner, which was kind of our back of the napkin franchise program in 2020, which we turned into a legitimate franchise program in 2022. And our distribution trucks deliver those pops. And it's really been a cool progression because it's exactly how we started. And we talked about kind of how it's tricky to stick with it when, you've got all these things to do. You're making the pops. You're worried about every last part of the business. The franchisees really just have to worry about finding events, going to those events, and, providing good experience, which that's still a lot, but it's a lot different than also having to worry about the flavor calendar, developing all the pops, making sure have all of the check boxes for the Department of Agriculture and your HACCP plans and all of the fun stuff that don't necessarily align with somebody that's got like a marketing or sales driven mindset. A lot of that stuff, isn't the most fun to think about.
Yeah. What was the crucial, if you had to think about now you're in the lead and you've got the Braves.
Yeah.
What led to what in terms of defensible advantage? Was it, we've got really great tasting pops, and so people want it, and then the Braves want it, and now we're here, and then distribution catches up? Or did you have a superior distribution advantage from the beginning? Was it those partnerships? Like, how did the snowball? I think it was
the product. I think it was people wanting it. Like the Braves wouldn't have let us in and taken a risk on us when they could do more Mayfield or more Dippin' Dots or whatever, if there wasn't like this idea that this would be like a good headline for them. You already said halo effect, but a little bit of that, like, they're curating something. This is something that people like and they go out of their way for. So I think it has to always be the product for the end customer. Like all the other stuff is like the business strategy, but no one should really have to care about that other than the people that are just interested in business and or in the business.
Yeah. If the end user doesn't love the popsicle, nothing else happens.
Yeah.
And what are you, when you survey competitive landscape, future of King of Pops, what keeps you up at night? Where do you feel most confident? How do you think about?
Good question. What keeps me up at night, I think, is probably just like something weird happens at 15. I don't know when it happened, but there's a bit of nostalgia that starts to get built in. Like there's people that I served in kindergarten that have come to work for us for a summer now. And like when they get married, they'll have them. And it's like, I remember going to Dairy Queen when I was a kid, and that was like my treat for good grades or whatever. So seeing those moments and not wanting to change the product offering too much or the brand too much, but still progressing is really interesting. I think what keeps you up at night is just like the not fun stuff about business. Like payroll. So we've got this very cyclical business, and we need to have like you said, how much hoarded away in order to make sure we're going to have enough to get through that. And like making sure your forecasting is tight enough. That's definitely stress inducing. Trying to take care of people from a sense of like, I think a lot of times we want to pretend like we're a bigger company than we are. So like having a progression for employees, like you want to continue to have people grow. But what we found is a lot of times like growing here means like getting some good experience and then leaving. And that doesn't always like feel nice to say. Yeah. But it's the truth. I mean, we can't, if we've got, 60, 70 people, you can't just, either the company has to grow like more than 20% a year, or else your growth is kind of approximately 20% per year, or someone's got to leave. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that part is hard because the people are certainly important. Those two things that come to mind.
And what are the parts of the business where you are drawing the most energy? Like what's really gets you going? When do you feel like you're in your gifts? When are you most fired up? And that can be a specific project or something you're working on now even.
Yeah, I think the new project, so we're turning back on Tree Elves. Pretty fired up about it.
What's Tree Elves?
Tree Elves is our Christmas tree delivery business. So as you could imagine, the seasons line up to complement each other. It's all pretty much in December, and we deliver Christmas trees and elf outfits, and you have to get some popsicles. It's not really an option, but they're good too. So we're turning that back on, both kind of for our franchisees and also just, we turned it off because of COVID and time to turn it back on type of thing. So just getting things restarted. Like I like the first 60 to 70% of that. And then once it starts to get to like, are we going to charge $150 or $153? Like that starts to like, I start to be like eyes glaze over, but that part's super important for things to work. So that's happening right now, and that's kind of constantly happening. One thing that I really like doing that I find myself almost, I don't know if I'm avoiding it or I don't do it as much as I want, is just like building the marketing calendar. Like I always like doing it, but it's important, not urgent. So I just keep doing the urgent stuff, because planning something that's like 3 to 6 months away doesn't seem to matter that much.
Yeah. Building with your brother. And I'm curious, how would you articulate your superpowers, his superpowers, and then how have you all?
Yeah. So Nick's really good at the detail things, 10 cents, 5 cents, 1 cent on a popsicle, and then the accounting. So a lot more than that. Like in the distribution side, he runs the distribution side of our business, and that's just a much higher stakes for like 1% margins, because it's a really low margin business. And then I think I'm good at like imagining what we might do, having too many ideas. And I think where it's nice to have somebody that you just trust, and we're 50-50 partners in this, is just like, I know he has no really ego associated with it. If it's a good idea, he'll help make it. So if it's not, like, he kind of either will say it or he just won't help make it. So both which kind of end with the same result of like, I might mess with something for 2 or 3 weeks and it doesn't really end up being anything. But he's like kind of the one that helps to turn something into a more tangible product, operation, et cetera.
Let's go to franchising.
Yeah.
So I'm sitting here, I've been nodding along to a lot of what you say. I'm a franchisee of the little gym at this point, and I appreciate your orientation towards the details. If my gym director, Ruby, listens to this, she'll nod, because there's a level beyond which I'm like, I don't care. That's your decision, Ruby. I understand. And what I perceive about King of Pops is a business that has soul to it.
Mm.
And I'm curious if soul scales with franchising.
Yeah.
And how do you keep wear the shirt, get sweaty? Like, how do you keep the irreverent, maybe the right or not right word, but like playful energy that you all have, and translate that into a franchise model?
I think it scales just as well with franchising as it does with any other scale. So like, Starbucks or something, I don't know. I just think that's a matter of how many people and how well you do to tell your vision and your story. So I actually think that a franchisee is going to be more bought in than an employee that we hire in Charlotte that I've never met that XYZ. We actually did it that way before. We had both. And there, I would say, are a proportion of people that are bought in and care, and a proportion of people that it's a job and they kind of care. And there's a portion of people that are like actively kind of not caring.
Yeah.
And that's just the reality that I've seen every way that we've run the business. And instead of worrying about the people that don't care, leaning into the people that do care. I mean, it's just like I don't know, 80-20 rule or all those types of things where it's like, instead of worrying about your worst, focus on your best.
Yeah.
And so I think we've done that.
The soul actually does scale, going back to some of the very first things you said around you draw energy from it because you have ownership in it and you want it to succeed. And
I think it does definitely scale because the people that are bought in as franchisees feel, just from, if I talk to them about whether we're going to approve or not approve a logo alteration, like they are in it. Like,
sure.
And it's not always the way you would imagine. And I think, I mean, soul is maybe a word that we throw around in a lot of different ways. And I think it's a good one for our brand. I think we're differentiated in that way. But similarly to kind of what I said about my brother, I don't think that I know how to inject soul into the business other than care about it a lot.
Yeah. To me, soul is kind of, if you mashed up, be thoughtful, get sweaty, and wear the shirt. It's like what you're going to produce is more than pressing a button at Starbucks.
Yeah.
Not to say Starbucks can't be soulful, but it's different when you're closer to the work.
Yeah. I think you're closer to it, but it is hard. I mean, it's definitely important to figure out how to manufacture the moments that are going to provide the opportunity for soul, but you can't just do it. Like, so going back to wear the shirt, like when we do orientations, I tell people the story. I say, I wear the shirt every day, da, 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 da. I care a lot about it, but I don't expect you to. Like, you're here, it's your first day. Like, we haven't done anything to earn you caring about this yet. Like, if we do our job right in 3-6 months, hopefully you will have your own version of wear the shirt or soul or whatever word we want to use. But it's something that you have to kind of earn by being a brand that is focused on something, I believe, more than just money. So some of the kind of like tangible ways we do that are create unexpected moments of happiness by giving away a lot of free pops and figuring out ways like, are you really into Magic the Gathering? You can go give out pops at Magic the Gathering Con with your friends, or you want to go to the Humane Society, or you want to go to a children's hospital or school or a baseball team or whatever. And once they do that and they're able to show up with the shirt on and do nothing other than like say like, hey, these are just for you, just to make your day happier. If they're able to do that, and we encourage people to do that, but we don't make them do it. The ones that do are the ones that love being here. And it's a formula, but you can't make someone want to go do that.
Yeah, it goes from a uniform to something that they want to put on voluntarily and are proud of. Makes total sense. Yeah. Where is the franchisee program now in terms of scale? How many franchisees are there?
Yeah, so we're growing about 2 new territories a month, and then people are starting to add them. So maybe we're up to, if you include additional territories, up to about 3 a month. So we have 61 sold, about 42 different franchisees, and we are as far north as DC and as far south as Miami. So
what does a franchisee territory include?
It's 100,000 people. And you basically get the rights to the zip codes that embody that population. We'll deliver you the pops. We'll set you up with the cart. We'll train you on that. And then
1 cart per 100,000?
No, you can have as many carts as you want. Yeah. And then, we'll start to help you with leads. So I think where we differentiate from a lot of franchisees, at least in like kind of the food space, is that we built our business and we have a lot of inbound leads. We didn't start franchising until we were 12 years in. So a lot of people are reaching out to us. So we've got a pretty smooth at this point way of kind of redistributing out those leads. If they're in a territory that you own, it goes directly to you. If it's near you, you get alerted and you can pick it up, even if it's not in a territory that you own, but it's unowned. And then we just started something this year for like festivals which people had always been doing these festivals, but they can now sign up ahead of time for the Bonnaroos, the Governor's Balls, all the kind of big travel festivals, which is, you might not want to do it all day, every day, but it's really fun to do 2 or 3 per year. Speaking of the franchise program, it's like there is the stuff in your territory, which that should be your focus, but kind of like an extra bonus, both for fun and also to make money, is to travel. So if you want to go to a traveling music festival or, really anything, like there could be a catering in Austin, Texas you want to do, you can go do that as well.
And what are the archetypes of what a franchisee looks like?
Yeah, great question.
Who's buying these?
So it's a good mix of like families where maybe a parent that it doesn't work full time wants to kind of take the lead, and they've got some kids that they're trying to kind of have like some positive values imparted on. We've got a decent amount of that. And that's really cool because the connections, it's all about connections.
Child labor franchises.
Basically, yeah. But when the...
but in a healthy way, I'm with you.
When the connection is like, we're used to calling on PTAs as King of Pops. If you are the president of the PTA or you've just been in the PTA for X amount of years, that conversation is much more authentic. And that can scale to churches or really anything that you're involved in a community. So it's the perfect business for that because it's so low friction to be at a spot. Like we can just show up anywhere in a minute's notice and it's just not really that big of a deal. So there's that, just the people that want to have like a more established and evolved lemonade stand essentially for their family to kind of run together. And that's really cool and on brand and very fun. And then there's people that are just getting kind of started in their entrepreneurial journey. And we are, I would argue 10 to 20% the cost of like these legitimate food franchises just to get off the ground. So $250,000 probably isn't in the wheelhouse for a lot of people that are, late 20s, early 30s that want to do something. But we're in a spot where you could either have the money through savings or take out a small SBA loan or something like that, where it's not feeling like you're putting your whole life on the line. And then you just go out there and hustle and you work all the card events and you grow it yourself and you add territory. So I think those are the 2 main buckets that we've seen is, starter entrepreneurs, people just getting started in that world, and kind of like families that are working together. And you're right. I mean, it is like sitting around the dinner table, like brainstorming and talking about the schedule is just, it's more effective for people to show up than,
it's one way to make sure labor shows up to work without calling out as if they live with you. My wife always gives me a hard time because it's one of my least popular takes, and I got a lot of takes, but it's that I just don't love lemonade stands because it's like what it reinforces to kids. And it's like they just set up shop in the front yard and expect you to stop your car and give them money for Gatorade.
For being cute.
Yeah. And it's like, that's nothing.
That is a hot take.
It is
I don't have very many takes, but I need to start having more takes, I think, in general. I'll have to write a few down.
Mm-hmm. iPhone note. Anytime you get a take, just put it in there. You can have me on your podcast. I'll tell you all my takes.
Okay.
What are the economics like for those 2 archetypes? And are they like very different?
Well, the go-getter entrepreneur type is more likely to sign like an area development, which in franchising is like, you're going to open one territory for us and you're going to commit to more territories in the future.
Sure. And I'm asking, is someone making a living full-time on that?
Yeah. They're making a living full-time and they're basically investing in, I'm so confident this is going to work that I don't want someone else to come in and buy these territories after I make the first one in this area a success, which from our perspective as a franchisor is what happens. If somebody starts in Orlando, one territory, we're going to see a bunch of other interest in Orlando just because they saw this person having fun out on the cart. So there's that person. And then the family is less. It's like the family members, they might kind of have the family kind of angle. They might have 1 or 2, but their goal isn't to scale it like as big as they can. We've had one family where like the youngest kind of family member, they're adult, I guess, ish, adult kids, but their family unit, if you will, like they bought it together and now one of the kids is just all about it. And so he's been growing kind of on his own now outside of like the original family unit. So that's been kind of cool. And I guess that's kind of similar. What I didn't explain this clearly before because it wasn't really what I was describing, but we do have a few of these of like adult families. So like, you know, people that have their own kids, like 4 family units coming together, brothers and sisters that are established, and they kind of do it as a project together. That's kind of cool. It's also like, it's a lot of people to deal with.
Yeah.
So we like to have one person in charge, but in those situations, it's like 9, but you know, take it or leave it.
Got it. And then what would you say to a prospective franchisee, like thinking about it?
I think it's the best franchise for those that want to get out in their community, have fun selling something they can be proud of for a really, really low risk. And I think that's our pitch. I mean, I think it's like our upside is not the same as if you're buying a Chick-fil-A, or you can't really buy a Chick-fil-A, but a McDonald's, you get the
Dunkin'
idea.
Donuts, sure.
It's just like it's a different risk level, and you can make a good amount of money. Like you said, it can be your full-time thing for sure. But it's probably not the one that's going to get you to retirement the fastest. I think it is the one that you will feel most connected with any part of your community, and especially the parts of your community that you want to feel connected with, authentically in a fun way. I mean, from like a slinger side of things, we've had people move to Atlanta that are just like, I want to meet people. This is a great way to meet people. And those are like some of the best slingers. Like if you actively are just interested in connecting with humans face to face, it's not as easy as we want it to be. Sometimes that can be like a hard thing, but like King of Pops carts are great ways to do it. It's just it's just fun. I don't know a different way to say it. So
seeing people who are out and about. Shifting gears.
Yeah.
You have kids.
Yeah.
3 and
6 months.
6 months.
Yeah.
How often does your 3-year-old eat King of Pops?
Oh, great question. She would eat one every night if she was allowed to. So probably 4 nights a week she has one.
Okay.
She knows, she very quick. We have Prince of Pops, which are no sugar added. That is probably 80% of the time, but she immediately knows that she's now getting something that isn't. She didn't know it for a while, and then some of her friends were getting the big ones, and she's like, So now she requires. Well,
so you for 15 years have run King of Pops, but you've got your daughter on a limited sugar intake.
Correct.
Square this for me.
Well, I mean, everything in moderation, right? I don't think it should be your, 3 times a day treat. But I think if you're going to have a treat, I think it's up there with as good as it could be, both from like a portion control standpoint, because even our large pops are 3 ounces, and you're kind of done. It's not like a pint of ice cream where you're like, I could just have 5 more bites.
Popsicles. Yeah.
No. It just kind of, it's a natural amount. Like you don't usually eat 2 popsicles for whatever reason. But yeah, I feel proud to give her the Prince of Pops, especially. And I cut the larger pop if she wants a different one. I cut it basically. She gets 2/3 of it. But she's 30 something pounds. It's a lot as a percentage of sugar for her body. She just shouldn't have as much.
It's one of my takes that I've put on the shelf. Sugar just turns my daughter from a perfect angel that she usually is 90% of the time. It just brings out a side that isn't that.
Yeah. And it's definitely alters minds for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I didn't realize y'all had Prince of Pops. Good to know.
Yeah. I don't think we kind of the challenge with that from the
but they're not one of the 7 on the cart, right?
Exactly. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The challenge is like we sell it for a little bit less, so the economics are hard for us to justify putting it out on the cart, because most kids, I'd say the wheelhouse is like 2 to 5, and then after 5, like they still should have it for maybe like 2, 3, maybe forever. I mean, I eat them myself, like if I don't want as big of a pop.
How are they sweetened?
They aren't really sweetened. They just have like grape, which is plenty sweet enough. So we just we use sweeter fruits. So we measure everything with like a Brix. I don't know what brick stands for, but you can put this little reflectometer thing on it and it says the number. And it can taste just as sweet with grape and apple and those types of things. Yeah.
Oh, bricks literally measures how sweet it is. Oh.
Yeah. Yes, I mean, the fruit has a lot of sugar in it. That's why you say no sugar added.
Yeah.
But, I am not as much as I maybe should be for my position, like a nutritionist. My philosophy, which sounds like it's a little different than your hot take, is just like everything in moderation. Like, I don't think it's a good idea to, whether it's beer or ice cream or pops or steak, all those things are bad for you. But I think you're probably going to be all right if as long as it doesn't become like all day, every time.
Yeah. There's a reason like a popsicle on a hot day is a thing that is one of the most universally beloved indulgences that exists.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah,
I feel like an absolutist against that is not a popular take.
That's not a hot take.
Well,
it's a hot take, but not one that I agree with.
Yeah. That's, and to be clear, I don't want to
say,
hot. I don't know. Yeah. That's too piping hot of a take. That's just a bad take. But I do feel like we were probably on the other side a little bit.
Sugar.
On the sugary life.
I think that I am definitely addicted to sugar. I mean, and not really pops though. Like if I have it, like just animal crackers. My daughter eats those now. I'll just be walking by like, I'll have 3 animal crackers. Why not? She gets it as a treat. Why don't I? But I wish I didn't. I fancy myself a fairly like strong-willed person, but maybe I just don't think it's bad enough yet. So maybe I need to read some of your articles just to see what it's doing to me.
I haven't written them, but I can send you a couple things. Shifting gears from sugar and limiting sugar intake. You've got a book.
Yeah.
Work is fun.
Yep.
Tell me about the process for deciding to write that book, writing it. What is the goal for the book?
Yeah. It's been a fun journey. But I think for me, the process was, I know we have a good story to tell. I tell it a lot. I'd like to kind of write it down more thoughtfully, and get it out there in a way that is not just to the people that are asking. And so I wanted to write it for that reason and figure out ways to get the lessons from it out there a bit more. And then I felt like for the first time, there was an actual reason for that. Like before it would have just been mainly ego. And I'd say still it's probably partly ego. But now the business case is like, we want to start selling franchises in areas where King of Pops is not like ubiquitous with the word popsicle. Like in Atlanta, like you said before, most people have heard of King of Pops, but in Texas, that's not the case. So we need to have like that moment for the soul, the word you said earlier, kind of gets described and explained. And unfortunately that can't happen with just like an Instagram post or an email newsletter. Like it needs to have a little bit of opportunity to kind of bake in some ideas. So I feel like it'll help us sell franchises. And then, just talk about the brand in an authentic way. I need to have my job shift more from like campaigns to being like a founder-led business more intentionally. And I also didn't know a great way to do that with what I've been doing. I've always wanted to write. I was a journalism major. I've been writing in different formats, but I was always like rejigging it into King of Pops words instead of letting it just be my thoughts because the audience was for King of Pops. So I couldn't just say stuff that I thought. So I also wanted to create like that platform for myself.
How do you think about success for the book? I'll say that whole thing. And how do you think about success for the book?
Yeah, I think success for the book, gosh, I don't know. I want to sell a few franchises. I want to sell a few copies. I want people to give me some compliments about it. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think the success already happened and that sounds like, like something that somebody would just say. But the truth of the matter is the content is self-lifting. Like it's going to make me think about these things that there's really no downside to it. If you want to be more intentional about having your work and ultimately all parts of your life be more enjoyable. And that's like something that I have to think about and talk about more for the next couple of years, 5 years, longer. Like that's going to help to make those things so. Yeah. So, I mean, I think if you write something that you believe it will make you believe in from a historical standpoint, and you also believe if you do it more and better, that you're going to be in a better spot. Like that seems lucky and powerful. And it's the truth. I mean, I was able to reflect on things for long periods of time that I would have probably not done if I wasn't writing a book. Like if I was writing a blog post, I might have thought let it sit for 2, 3, 4 days and edit it a few times. But these are things that I came back to for like a year and a half when I was just in like complete solitude thinking about stuff. That felt cool. Yeah, it's fun.
It resonates a lot with how you think about success. And I appreciate you being honest and saying part of it's ego driven. Yeah. Like people ask me, what is success of the podcast? I'm like, well, one, I want people to listen to it and like it. And if you hear an episode and tell me that you enjoyed it, like it's not like I'm selling this. So like that is a thanks. Yeah. And then two, like getting to think about the things that we talk about, preparing, thinking about after the episode, editing it. Like a lot of those people are telling me about their favorite habits and the things that have given them energy personally and professionally. Like that nourishes me too. Yeah. So I totally hear you on just taking the time to think about these things that are important. Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. And then work being fun specifically, does that come naturally to you? Do you have to do things to cultivate that? So have there been seasons when it is especially true and seasons when it's not true? Definitely. I think there's been more where it has been true than hasn't been true, but there's definitely plenty of seasons where it isn't true or hasn't been true. And a bit more about like the process of how I landed on the book title, the book theme, all of those things is I had a writing partner, and we sat like for a couple weeks, just like he interviewed me basically and was just asking questions, and we were just talking about things. And then we started shooting around ideas of what it could be. And that process, I wish that I could say I would have been able to get to on my own, but like part of us are, I don't know if like students is the right word, but I had to have this person, his name's Joe, tell me like, you're onto something with this, to give me like the nudge I needed to go. Which is really interesting because I wish that wasn't the case. But it is. And I find that in a lot of things. I mean, like everything is a nice popsicle analogy, but like you feel like way more confident in a flavor if you make it, if someone tastes it and they're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. It's just like you just said with the podcast, like you want some feedback, and then you can go out in the world and you might edit it a little bit or tweak the amount of whatever it's got in it. And you feel just pumped about it to go out there. So that was something that maybe it's similar to my brother in running the business, where you've got like a safe space to like reverberate ideas. And then when they get said back to you, and even if it's just one person saying like, yeah, I think you're onto something with that, and then you run with it, that was super important for me. Thank you. If you weren't working on King of Pops, what would you be working on? Great question. Do you ever have escapist fantasies? I don't. And I think I'm like, I wonder if there's something wrong with me for that reason. I more worry about. Great that you don't. Yeah. I more worry about like it going out of business and then I have to find something else to do. I've got that. That's the opposite of fantasy. That's like a fear, I guess. But no, I don't think so. I mean, I think if I could do anything in addition to what I'm doing, which is maybe the same question, I would like to consult more on brands, which I do a tiny bit of, but I don't really have enough time to do it right. And what we've done a lot, like kind of poorly, is kind of half start brands because we just don't have the energy or the resources to do like a new brand launch. But I like starting brands, and it doesn't even have to be food. I think food is probably where like I could be paid to do it because I've done it successfully. But I think just I like brand
stuff, not necessarily design, not necessarily story, not necessarily strategy, but like kind of all those things wrapped together, and just giving my hot takes on their ideas.
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's do some lightning rounds
Yeah.
to end this.
Yeah.
What is your favorite Atlanta meal?
Sheesh. Favorite restaurant in Atlanta is Ticonderoga Club. And I guess I mainly get the eggplant, but that's because it's appropriately priced and I love it. I don't feel like I can get the most expensive thing every time. So I'll go with that.
What King of Pop pairs best with eggplant from Ticonderoga Club?
Yikes. Probably none, to be honest.
I mean, not pairs, follows.
Follows it well. They probably want something a little bit sassy and indulgent. So maybe we go with what popped into my mind, which I'm just loving right now, is our key lime pie got reformulated. So I could imagine that on their menu there.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do you think happens to us when we die?
Oh, great question. I'm Christian. I think I'm somewhere in the spectrum of, I don't think it's exactly, I don't believe it's exactly as written. I think we go to some space energetically, but I don't know where. I don't think about it as much as I used to. I very much did worry about it I remember laying in bed just like contemplating non-existence and being scared of it, but I don't feel scared of that anymore. So that's my answer. A non-answer.
What's a favorite book that you have that you would recommend to anybody listening?
Favorite book. I'm a big Hunter S. Thompson fan, so if I was reading just completely for pleasure, I would maybe pick one of those, or Jack Kerouac. Those are kind of my two guys. So I'll say Dharma Bums for a non-biz book, and then if I have to pick,
It doesn't have to be business.
Okay, I like business books too, which I feel inclined to pick one as well because I've read far more of those.
Sure.
I'm more
business.
well read in business books than I am in any other genre. But for Jack Kerouac, I think it's more like around just this idea of living completely freely. It's a nice fantasy to kind of read somebody who isn't able to do it, but is able to think about it at a level kind of more deeply than I currently can.
Is there a part of that you think you incorporate in the way you matriculate through the world?
I think definitely when I was just starting, yes, very much like there's not really much to lose attitude was a big part of like King of Pop's Genesis story. Like it didn't seem like that big of a deal if it wasn't successful. And I feel that way in general about things. I've got like a very high tolerance for failing and or putting out. Like I said before, I usually only get things to 65, 70%. I feel comfortable putting out 80%, which is a quality and also a problem.
Sure.
And then as far as business books, I guess nothing's really coming to me. So I don't feel like I should say anything.
Work is fun.
Yeah, that's gonna be a good one for sure. I just finished reading. I can't even remember the last thing I've read, but I read like one every week or two.
I had my brother on here and I was like, any books or any other content you've been enjoying? He's like, I really like the Macon in Atlanta podcast. I was like, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
It's a great one. Yeah.
Yep. A lot of people are saying it to me.
I do like the Base Camp guys, Jason Fried and David Heinemeier Henson, or however you say his name. I think that's right. DHH. Mm-hmm. I appreciate those two guys a lot in the way that they approach things. And then I feel like Seth Godin's gotten a little bit out of like the mainstream, probably intentionally by himself or for himself, but always like go out of my way to hear him on any podcast, or if he comes out with a new book, read it. But those are two. And then the Zingerman's folks, like I should also mention Ari, is super inspirational for me. And both the books that he writes, which are like probably not like as digestible as some of the books that I choose to read, just like kind of hearing in the background. But their story, which was very well, I can't think of the name of the person that wrote like the story of Zingerman's that wasn't Ari, but that book was awesome as well.
What's a habit that you see us practicing in modern culture that you think doesn't serve us well? And what would you replace that with? And you can't say giving sugar to kids.
Okay.
I know that was what was coming.
Yeah, that's probably what was coming. A habit. I mean,
and you can't also say, not allowed to say looking at your phone too much.
Yeah, I mean, that's the obvious one.
And we had to cut that after 10 episodes.
Yeah, I think I would have, that's like the one that would have come up, but let me think of something. I mean, I think there's one that I wrote about in the book that is basically around like feeling a need to progress quickly that I don't think serves us well. But I don't know how to put that into like a active thing that you are doing. It might be like a different form of scrolling where you're looking at job boards and thinking about making, $12,000 more per year. And I think what you should be doing instead, which would get you more than $12,000 per year, is like just doing stuff, whether it's at your job, ideally, where you're just finding ways to dig into that deeper and create value. Or if it can't be your job, you're just kind of creating something. But I think there's a lot of like looking for work that is going to be more fulfilling and or make a little bit more money when you should be creating more value, and kind of letting those opportunities present themselves to you.
I've been thinking about this a lot in the background on instant gratification versus deep work and building.
Yeah.
And I'm opening at least 4 little gyms. We have 1 open. We're manual and in the weeds right now. And I noticed myself being like, I just want it to work so it can scale and go. And it's like, dude, that's not
definitely like that.
It's not how it works. Slow down.
You just want the next thing so badly, and it doesn't feel any different than the current thing once you have that thing. And you can learn that lesson like infinite times in a row, but we have to constantly remind ourselves, like this saying, which I guess you could maybe see in one of the cameras, these are the good old days. Like I feel bad about it because every time I like want to write a blog post or talk about it, there's a flood or there's a war or there's a riot and like all this negative stuff going on. So it feels inappropriate. And I'm worried about like the comment section of what that would say. Like, how could you say this at that moment? But I think within our own selves and the things that we do have control over and the things that we are proud of or should be proud of that we're a part of, like these are pretty much the good old days. Like it's not going to feel more powerful, more impactful, like you said, once you have the 4th gym. It's just going to be like, what's 10 going to feel like, So I definitely both can't cut that off, but do think about it quite a bit.
Yeah. I think it's our human nature. And I think living with cell phones
didn't help.
Sparks that in us that
it's always available
so quickly.
Yeah.
It's the first thing that I'm going to do when we turn this off is like, who needed me in this hour? What urgent thing happened?
Yeah, exactly.
Answered nothing. Right. Like, what is a specific hope you would have for Atlanta or for Georgia when you think about the future?
Well, I love Atlanta. I think it's the most underrated big city, but it's really the only one I've ever been in. And my hope for it would just be that we continue to think about things as a community. I think like the Beltline was such a gift that we just got lucky / deserved at the same time. And it's shown how like thoughtfully doing something can completely change the trajectory. So I hope that from like a city planning perspective, we can keep thinking about these things and see like, how can we do more of that? And just figure out ways to kind of authentically engage with each other more. And those make good places to sell popsicles too. So that's nice.
Nice. We'll bring those overlap.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Steve, thank you very much for the time. I think everyone is rooting for you in King of Pops.
Appreciate that, man.
Keep it up.
Thank you so much. It was fun.
15 more years.
Here we go.
All right, that's our show. Thank you to Steve and the King of Pops team for hosting me here. Thank you for all of you for listening to Macon Atlanta. As Steve and I talked about, like one of the main reasons to do this is to get feedback and to hear what you like, what you didn't like. So please respond, whether you reply in the comments if you're watching this on Spotify or YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, or reply to the email if we send them out on the Substack. Welcome hearing from you. What'd you think? What do you want to know more of? What do you want to see on future episodes? Would love to make this a good and generative thing that's helpful to us. Rooting for King of Pops. Think about Steve next time you grab a cold one, even though if you're not going to do that apparently in the winter months. Although I will say, plug for tree elves. My wife and I have done it for years. Really good thing. Affordable way to get a nice Christmas tree. They deliver it and your kids will probably love having an elf in their house. Unless it terrifies them. But ours think it's pretty cool. So anyway, thank you. Thank you, Steve. Thank you all. And we'll talk to you soon.